our IMA. And I think my last count, there was some 683 churches across Durham area and vicinity. And if you take all the women out of those churches, I can almost guarantee you that number would drop down to about 100 and something, because women have always been the strong force, and God has used them to encourage our pastors, to encourage other ministers. And you have some strong female ministers out there, man, that you just can't beat. One, and I'm sure you know when I call her name, Pastor Rachel Green, has stood up and has fought for her community, for this community. Tika Dimson, fighting hard, in the face of adversity and in the face that many things that I'm sure they will not tell me or tell others that they have to face. And a lot of things that I found out that my mom had to face, and I found out after she had passed, and I wonder sometimes how she was able to smile and keep going. But that was something that God had placed in her. And to see our young women sometimes allow someone to degrade them, allow someone to call them a name that I know my mom would never stand for, because they have to understand that God has made them and created something greater, and to lessen that is to be a disservice to those women that have fought. You can go back to the history, Harriet Tubman, I mean, when you look back in the life and times of the African American, even during slavery, what kept our men going was their wives. What kept them motivated was their wives. I cannot imagine what it must have been like for a slave to get whipped by the master and then have to go back and face that woman. But she never saw so much, or a letdown, but she saw how she could help pick him up. And when they saw him get too strong and that family get too strong, what did they do? They separated him from the family. And so that has cost us. And I think somehow we have that in the back of our minds, and that's why I tell folks that's why it's so easy for a man to run today, because during history, that's what we were taught to do. But the women had to stay. They had to be there. They sold the men to keep the families in check, but they knew they needed the women even then to keep that family together.
Yeah, and a lot of times, even now, because I was hoping that Aisha was going to call in, who's one of the praise leaders for Christ Central and everything, and I'll like to get her on a later show. But I know that even today, sometimes that's an issue that they face within the church, because sometimes there's we understand the power of women in the church, but I sometimes feel that the church doesn't necessarily always give women the respect that it needs to give in the church. And, of course, we've heard all these horror tales about women that have been abused within the church environment, whether that's directly by folks in power in the church or whether that's by allowing things to happen within the church grounds and things. So that's something that I think we have to be very careful about, because sometimes that is also a danger within the church that I've seen just in our those here as well as around the country. And you actually mentioned about powerful women, and I know Pope Randall's still on the phone, because he actually was talking earlier before you got on the line about his mother, who actually was diagnosed with mental illness, and he helped her get through that. And now, if I understand, she's staying with one of his sisters that's in Atlanta. Is that right, Randall?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So he's able to relate to a lot of what you're saying as well. And he's been involved in a lot of the kind of stuff that Maria was talking about, the mentoring programs in New York. And I was just really quickly wondering, because just to bring things kind of full circle, when you're talking to people about mentoring, do you sometimes find that people want to automatically make mentoring even a political kind of thing? Because we know that mentoring is something that needs to be addressed by both parties. And like Dean said before y'all got on the line, we've got to understand and study our candidates and not just vote for them because they belong to one party or another, but actually because they represent what we feel is a just cause or feel is the right, that they are on the right side of the issues, whatever those issues are. So I was wondering, Randall, when you're talking to people in mentoring, how do you find that your mentors come from both sides of the political aisle?
Absolutely, and I just want to thank Dr. Dean for being a guest on the show. He made some great points this evening. I was listening very closely. It seemed like I wasn't. Dr. Birch, please forgive me. which is awesome. But from my perspective, one of the key things when we're dealing with young people is, like someone said earlier, not giving them what we want to give them, but finding out what they need. What do they want to hear? For example, last week I was in New York City, worked with the Department of Probation, and we spoke to about 60 young men that had gun charges, about 3 mentoring groups. And we talked a lot about this is what we expect you to do, but we asked, what do you expect of yourself? And then what are the steps you're going to take to get there? So politics has a major effect on mentoring, a major effect on our communities. But it's important that individuals like ourselves take the time out to go over all the things that really make sense. Talk about technology and racism and sexism, about police brutality. Because at the end of the day, our parents didn't always talk about those things. But now with social media and the way kids are far ahead of us, we have to reach them at a younger age.
There's no doubt about that. And Dr. Burks, to come back to your conversation with you and everything, for those that are listening that are here in the area, because like I said, we got listeners from throughout, but we definitely have some that are right here in the area that your house district is in. And tomorrow is election day. What do you think are the important issues that they need to be thinking about, and why should they vote for you? I'm going to put it directly at you. So somebody's sitting there, haven't voted. I've already voted. Won't tell you who I voted for, but I've already voted. For those that are in your district, actually, I don't think I'm in your district, but for those that are in your district, what is the important issue, and why should they vote for Dr. Burks?
The issues are, I think, number one is bringing our state and our community together. Homelessness is an issue. Gentrification is an issue. When I go down Roxborough Street or Roxborough Road and historical residences and neighborhoods and see that grandma is being pushed out, I think we have a way, and it's incumbent upon us to say, hey, no, stop this. You know, we have to find a way to help our elderly, our people keep their homes. If you're going to put a $175,000 house by a $80,000 house, and God knows that that individual that's been living in that $80,000 home or $40,000 home for years cannot afford it, you know, there has to be something. And I think when it comes to it, and I always, oh, no, you know what, never mind, it is what it is. But for folk to vote for me, they need to vote for me because I do care about not only my African-American community, but I care about the Durham community. I know what Durham has to offer. I know what we can do for the state of North Carolina. And I think a vote for me will help us be able to reach across the aisle because, honestly, I get tired of the bickering. I get tired of the fighting. I get tired of the rhetoric. While we're arguing, if you've ever heard the message, Watch Them Dogs, the minister, when he's talking about the two big dogs fighting, and while the two big dogs were fighting, the little dog came and took the bone, and when they got through fighting, they turned around, and the little dog and the bone was gone. And I think while we're fighting, unfortunately, someone else is coming in and taking our land, taking our property, and our folk are being left without homes, without houses, without shelter, without food. And I think that as humans, we have a relationship to one another, and we have a duty to each other to go and make sure that what happens in Raleigh benefits all of us, not just some of us, not the rich, not just the upper middle class, but all of us, because at some point in time, it's going to affect me. At some point in time, it's going to affect you. And learning how to work together, learning how to come to the table and talk to each other, not at each other, not screaming and not yelling at one another, but to sit down and have an honest conversation and be able to agree to disagree. I tell folks, I may not agree with what you say, but I will fight to my death for your right to say it. And that's what I take to the North Carolina House, and that's why you should vote for me. Is because I will try and I will work to make a difference, and I will be a difference and not just of the status quo, because I've lived it. Mark, I think when it comes to illness and sickness, I'm a 6-year veteran of dialysis, a 7-year transplant. I grew up in low-income housing. I know what it is to be homeless, and God has bought me, and I think everything he has allowed me to go through has been for this moment and for this purpose, to go help and make sure that no one else has to go through what I went through.
And we definitely are glad that you're running, and wish you luck on the campaign and everything. And I definitely can understand gentrification. I was actually thinking about that earlier today because for the second time I went by and saw the old Talk of the Town sign, and I know that that's up for sale, and that's a historical building here in Durham. And I was talking to a good friend of mine, and he told me that, they only want like a cool $1.2 or $1.4 million. I don't know many of us that got that kind of money, so I doubt very seriously that we're going to get that building, even though it has historical value to us, because it was also, back during the Hayti area, it was the historical beauty school that existed there, and so it has a lot of historical value. And one of the things I wrote on Facebook is that I hope that whoever buys that they at least honor that part of that legacy, because I'm thinking, we have some folks with that kind of money, but more than likely it's going to be somebody of a different shade that gets that building. So I hope that they at least understand the legacy as they continue to grow and develop downtown Durham. And I was just thinking about that as I was talking to my friend, and we drove by and saw that sign that said that it was for sale. And we know that there's a lot of other places that are historical. They're being bought and converted, and the very least they can do is honor the history if they're not going to at least keep something African-American in there. At least that's some of my thoughts on that and things of that nature. So I was just thinking about that as I was hearing what you had to say. And I think we've got about roughly 4 minutes to go. So I wanted to hear from each of you some thoughts as to what kind of message you want to give people that are listening to the podcast, like a final thought or something that is an inspiration to you that is on your mind that you might want to share with them. So Maria's left, so I'll start with Randall, and then I'll go to you, Dr. Birch, and then I'll say some words, and then we'll close out with me. But Randall, some final thoughts? You've heard some great conversation here for about, you jumped on at about 8:30, so for about an hour and a half. So what are some of your thoughts as to what you've heard and some of just final thoughts that might be on your mind?
Well, Dr. Birch, it's a pleasure meeting you. I love being on Straight Talk with Bean and Mark, guys. Thank you. Keep your blessings doing what you're doing. The last thing I want to say is this, that I want everybody that's listening to your show, everyone who can hear our voice, to understand that every moment that you live your life like it's the last. Always operate at 100%, because when you operate at a high level, anything is possible. Take time out to pray, focus on the dreams you want to do, and invest in yourself more than things. And I just want to say that this program is wonderful because it gives all types of people an opportunity to share their dreams, their goals, the things they're doing. And we need to have these serious conversations so we can go from being good to being great. And at the end of the day, we all want to be magnificent. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Dr. Birch, still got a minute or two to go, so what are some of your final thoughts? I know it's hard for a reverend to do, but try to do it in a minute.
I'm going to say to what was just said, and I'll leave it with these words of Mahalia Jackson. If I can help somebody as I travel along, if I can help somebody with a word or song, if I can help somebody from doing wrong, my living shall not be in vain.
Amen.
No doubt. Some very powerful words, and definitely amen to that and everything. But as I'm thinking and hearing all of what you had to say, hearing what Maria had to say before she had to get off and go perform and everything, one of the things that I always encourage people to do is, as I just said today, definitely study and analyze what is going on around you. Analyze what is happening in the world. Yes, you don't want to get caught up, like Randall said, in having to drive you down, but at the same time, as we do have some very important things happening in our society, analyze and study what is going on so that you can make good decisions. Being is on you.
You know what, as they say, and as I always say, when you walk outside your front door, it's showtime and the world is your stage. Just make sure that people are not watching the rehearsal. We thank all of our guests for being with us tonight. And we'll see y'all the same time, same place, Blog Talk Radio, 7 o'clock p.m. every Monday night, except catch the replays on the holidays, and we'll see you next week.
And speaking of next week we've got Tequila Jim on. Tequila Jim is a artist that is a blues harmonica.